The city of Paris is a fascinating world of discovery, and in the next hour you'll see how to prepare for your trip and what to expect before you go. A few of the sights you'll see include the masterpiece of structural design, the Eiffel Tower, known as the symbol of Paris. You'll see the impressive Arc de Triomphe, Napoleon's gigantic monument to victory, and stroll down the famous Champs-Élysées. Then we'll take a leisurely cruise on the River Seine for a different view of the city and its monuments. We'll wander through the Latin Quarter near Sorbonne University for a night on the town, and then on to the famous Moulin Rouge nightclub. You'll see the breathtaking palace at Fontainebleau, stroll through the gardens and see where Napoleon said his final farewell to his troops, and then on to the magnificence of Versailles, where Louis XIV lived in splendor and created his magnificent royal court. All this and more to help you familiarize yourself with one of the most fascinating vacation destinations in Europe.
Hi, I'm Laura Mackenzie, and welcome to Paris, the capital of France, and I think one of the most complex and fascinating cities in the world. Everything you've heard about Paris is true. The things to see, the places to go, the food, the people, and I'm just as excited about seeing it as you are. So what better place to start than one of the most famous landmarks of the city, the Eiffel Tower.
It was the tallest structure in the world when it was built by Gustave Eiffel, the father of modern steel construction. He used building techniques that were only recognized engineering practices years later. A survivor of the Great Exhibition of 1889, it's 1,050 feet high. The cement and steel bases supporting the four huge arches were the first idea of modern reinforced concrete foundations. Today, for a few francs, elevators can take you quickly up to the various tower levels. But at its inauguration, the lifts were not yet operating, and the Prime Minister had to walk to the first platform. His Minister of Commerce went all the way to the top to present Eiffel with the Legion of Honor medal. Eiffel mortgaged part of his construction company to pay for most of the cost of the tower. Within 8 months of its opening, almost 2 million people had visited the tower, and Eiffel's debt was cleared. Today, the box office average has been 1 million visitors a year. There are restaurants and shops on the lower floors, and from the third you can see Paris for a distance of 45 miles.
One of the best views of the city is from up here because it's all out in the open and you don't have to shoot through a window to get a picture. But it can be cold and windy, so dress accordingly. Also, the lines can be very long during the day for the elevators, so the best time to come is either early in the morning or in the evening.
In review, the best time to view Paris from the Eiffel Tower is at sunset, and you can avoid crowds in the early morning or evening, and be prepared for cooler, windier weather on the upper platforms. Another revolutionary design was the Pont-Neuf Bridge, begun in 1578. Built as two arches, it didn't have tall houses on the ends to hide the view of the river. Pont-Neuf means new bridge, but it happens to be the oldest bridge in Paris. As you sightsee and explore the city, you'll notice little sculptures and fountains on street corners, squares, and parks, combining to make Paris a place of perennial charm. The Paris Opera is the largest theater for lyric opera in the world. It can accommodate an audience of 2,000 with 450 on-stage performers. Tickets are available at the box office without an agent's commission, and once inside, take note of the ceiling decorated by Chagall. The National Theatre's presentations range from classical to avant-garde, but note that all performances will be in French. You can get another great view of Paris if you climb to the top of the Arch of Triumph, or the Arc de Triomphe. From here, you can see the 12 avenues radiating in a star pattern from the arch itself. The arch is the culminating point of the Triumphal Way, conceived by Emperor Napoleon as a tribute to France's military victories and heroes. A war memorial to the Grand Army, it was completed in 1863 and has a single archway, on the face of which are decorative bas-reliefs. In 1920, the tomb of the unknown soldier was placed under the arch with an eternal flame that's tended each evening. To rent a car in Paris, all you need is a valid driver's license and your passport. If you have a major credit card, you usually don't have to leave a cash deposit. Local rent-a-car companies are generally cheaper than the international names, but you may have to return the car to the same place you rented it. Traffic jams are a major problem in and around the city, and finding a parking place is impossible. If you'd prefer to do your sightseeing on foot, pedestrians are supposed to have the right of way in crosswalks, but impatient drivers sometimes ignore that fact, so be careful. Public transportation is very good in the city, and you have several choices to get around. Buses are efficient and cheap, but slow. You use 1 to 3 tickets depending on the distance, and you can buy your tickets as you board the bus. The metro is considered the world's most efficient and cleanest, and it's the fastest way to get around the city. Every metro station has a large map showing all the lines and stations. You can make as many transfers as you want on a single ticket. Rather than buying tickets separately, it's better to buy a book of tickets or a 2 to 7 day tourist pass. Taxis are the most convenient way to get around, but also the most expensive. Night rates are higher than day rates, and you'll pay for extras like extra people and luggage. It's expensive to call for a taxi because they charge for the trip necessary to pick you up. You can easily find them cruising or parked at a taxi stand. If there are no taxis at a stand, line up and wait your turn for one to pull up. In review, buses run from 7 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. with some continuing just after midnight. Use 1 to 3 tickets depending on the distance, and it's cheaper to buy a book of tickets at the metro station than pay as you board. The metro runs much longer hours than buses. They're efficient, fast, and clean. To save money, buy a book of tickets or a tourist pass, and all bus and metro tickets are interchangeable. Remember to line up for taxis at a taxi stand. If you call one, they charge for the trip to pick you up. Pay the meter charge plus any extras, including the expected 15% tip. Unmarked luxury sedans are known as tourist cars. Usually soliciting business at hotels and airports, they're sometimes double the price of a taxi. One of the most popular attractions in Paris also has its own metro stop, the Louvre. This great museum and art gallery is worth a minimum of a half-day visit. Originally the residence of the French court before moving to Versailles, the Louvre incorporates architectural aspects of nearly every period, from the medieval ages to the 19th century.
The Louvre was once a royal palace, and it's now one of the most famous museums in the world. Besides paintings and sculpture, it houses a large collection of Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Oriental antiquities. It's open every day of the week except Tuesdays, and since there's almost 500,000 objects cataloged inside, you could easily spend the whole day and not see everything.
Admission is free on Sundays, and portable tape recorders are available for rent with a pre-recorded tour. In the language of your choice, it will guide you through the highlights of the museum in about 90 minutes, and you can fast forward or rewind at your own pace. The recorders can be rented just inside the entrance and can be shared by a couple of people. This allows you to spend as much time as you'd like with your favorites, such as the sculpture Venus de Milo and the most famous painting in the world, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. In review, the Louvre is open every day except Tuesday. It has its own metro stop, and admission is free on Sundays. The floors are all marble and very slippery, so wear rubber-soled shoes, not leather. The largest church in Paris after Notre Dame is Saint-Sulpice, distinguished by an impressive ornamental facade. It was designed by 6 different architects over a period of 134 years and features statues of the saints built into the exterior. If you have a moment to step inside, note the 18th century organ above the entrance. It's said to be the finest organ in all of France. The Place de la Concorde was the place where over 1,000 people were guillotined during the Revolution, including King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. It's also the location of Paris's oldest monument, a 75-foot-tall pink granite Egyptian obelisk from the Temple of Luxor, dating back to 1300 BC, a gift from King Muhammad Ali. From here you have views of Parisian landmarks in all directions, as several streets branch off from the square, and across the river you can see the Bourbon Palace, the seat of the National Assembly. The Luxembourg Palace is closed to the general public, but the gardens are open and it's a relaxing spot to wander through. At one end of a long pond in the garden is the Fountain des Médicis, named for Marie de Médicis, who built the palace and gardens in 1615. She wanted it constructed as close as possible to the palaces she remembered in her home city, Florence, Italy. The gardens are very popular with students from the nearby Latin Quarter, and you'll see them here often relaxing between classes. The Pantheon was originally an old church that was consecrated in 1791 to house the ashes of what the French term the great men of the period of French liberty, or revolutionary heroes. Another unusual church is the Saint Etienne du Mont, a combination of Gothic and Renaissance architecture. Cannonballs are a reminder of how important a role the military has played in the history of France. Les Invalides is a complex of buildings and monuments dedicated to past military heroes and soldiers. Dôme des Invalides is best known for housing the tomb of Napoleon I. In a crypt exactly below the center of the cupola, the body is enclosed in 6 coffins, one inside the other, made of lead, iron, mahogany, ebony, and oak. The Palace of Justice is a huge complex of buildings, most notably the Sainte-Chapelle, 2 chapels built one above the other, and the Palace of Justice itself, where you can go inside to hear the cases and trials. The Concierge, the 3rd part of the complex, was where Marie Antoinette was imprisoned before her execution. The entire Palace of Justice complex is open to visitors, but usually closed Tuesdays throughout the year and Fridays in the winter. Check times before you go. The Élysée Palace is the official residence of the President of the French Republic. Built in 1718 as a home for the son-in-law of an aristocratic financier, it became public property during the Revolution. Later, Empress Josephine lived here, and it's where Napoleon signed his act of abdication in 1815. The palace has been the official presidential residence since 1873.
If your idea of Paris is little outdoor cafes and artists painting on the square, then this is where you want to come. Mon Marte is the highest hill in Paris and the place to come for atmosphere.
The center of the Montmartre village life is a square called Place de Terre, where the artists collect and hopefully sell their talents to the tourists. You can sit at an overpriced outdoor cafe and have your portrait or your caricature drawn by any one of the many artists who approach you. Definitely set the price first and haggle a little before deciding on how much. Some artists are good and some are bad, so look around until you see someone's portrait that really looks like the subject. Paintings are displayed in the center of the square, and the artist is usually painting or selling close by. If you decide to buy, be sure to haggle for a price and even walk away looking disinterested. When you happen to stroll by again, you'll probably get a better price. Feel free to sort through the piles of original drawings and sketches. Most are of Paris scenics, but there are some unusual ones as well. Montmartre is the same area where famous artists once lived and worked: Van Gogh, Renoir, and Picasso. Now traveled by more touristic vendors and street painters, it's still, however, a definite must-see for anyone coming to Paris. In review, Place de Terre is the square to find the artists in Montmartre, and you can haggle for prices with them. Also be aware that the outdoor cafes on the square are priced high for tourists. Just outside the square is the Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur. From the dome, you can get a view of 30 miles on a clear day. The unusually white facade is due to the quality of the stone that whitens and hardens with age. The square bell tower on the backside houses a bell that weighs 19 tons. Long flights of steps lead up to the Sacré-Cœur, and walking is the only way. Musicians entertain for those who need or want to stop and listen, and usually pass the hat afterwards. The steps are a popular gathering spot for the younger crowd, especially on weekends, and it's here that they come to see and be seen. If you enjoy being with people under 30, this is the place to meet them. Forget high heels if you're coming to Montmartre. Streets and stairs are usually cobblestones, and you could easily fall or twist your ankle if you're not wearing flat shoes.
A cruise down the River Seine is another great way to get a look at Paris. The cruises run all day from morning until late at night, and you can hear a multilingual commentary on a lot of the landmarks that you'll be seeing. It takes about an hour to an hour and a half, and lunch and dinner cruises are available too.
Depending on the weather, choose an open-topped boat or an enclosed one and bring a sweater if you need it, as it's generally cooler and breezier on the water. From the river is where you'll get a feel for where everything is in Paris. The city is built around the Seine, and when someone directs you to the left bank or the right bank, it literally means one side of the river or the other. There are two islands situated almost in the geographical center of Paris, and bridges connect them with either side of the Seine. Near the Pont de Alma Bridge is where to find the cruises, and they'll take you around the islands, pointing out the landmarks on the way. The Isle St. Louis is the smaller of the two islands and known generally as a very exclusive residential area. The Isle de la Cité is the largest, and it was the location of the first Parisian settlement and the first religious center in the city. This is where the oldest part of the city lies, and where the Palace of Justice and the Cathedral of Notre Dame are located. In review, the following is a list of information on the Seine River cruises, times, and where to find them.
The Cathedral of Notre Dame is the most important cathedral in Paris, and it's a great example of Gothic art and architecture. It was the scene of the coronation of Napoleon I, and you can go inside and see the famous stained glass rose window.
The Notre Dame Cathedral has had religious significance for over 2,000 years. In Roman times, it was the site of a temple to Jupiter, and later the first Christian church was built here. When that church was destroyed by Norman invasions, the present cathedral began construction. Started in 1163, it took over 160 years to build. Its Gothic style is said to be a perfect example of medieval architecture. The inside is very impressive, large enough to hold no less than 9,000 people. It's open to the public every day except Tuesday from 10 to 5:30. Don't miss the central rose window, which depicts the signs of the zodiac, the months of the year, and the vices and virtues. Jumping suddenly into the 20th century, you see the newest museum in Paris. It was deliberately designed by Italian and English architects to look more like an oil refinery than a cultural center, and it's popularly called the Beaubourg. Outside glass-enclosed escalators take you up the several levels, and there's a restaurant and cafeteria on the top floor.
The Beaubourg is the popular name for the Georges Pompidou Center, which is a modern complex housing a library, an art museum, a children's workshop, a cinema, and a lot of other things. But it's the plaza area out in front that draws the crowds.
The plaza is a popular gathering place for all ages, especially on weekends, and anytime there's a crowd, there will be performers. Street artists are sprinkled through the crowd, but before having your picture drawn, haggle for a price first. And if you watch the performers, be prepared for them to pass the hat for tips. Off to the side of the plaza is one of the most unusual fountains you'll ever see, and it's hard to tell who's more fascinated with it, kids or adults. In review, the Beaubourg Center is open from noon to 10 p.m. weekdays and 10 to 10 weekends. Weekend afternoons are the best time to see the performers, and remember to have change handy for tips. Shopping here is an adventure in style, and the prestige of owning a Parisian label is known in all countries, crossing all frontiers.
Paris is undoubtedly the fashion capital of the world, and anyone who doubts that fact should take a walk along the Avenue Georges V off the Champs-Élysées and window shop some of the designers like Pierre Cardin, Yves Saint Laurent, and Christian Dior, to name a few. Of course, the prices will probably be a lot more than you're going to want to spend, but you can look in the windows and get an idea of what to shop for in the cheaper stores.
Another main street for designer shopping is the Faubourg Saint-Honore, a long avenue full of shopping temptations. Twice a year in January and August, the fashion designers present their collections to buyers and journalists at very exclusive, invitation-only showings. You can get a tax rebate in most stores with a minimum purchase and presentation of your passport. To collect, take your receipts to the rebate office at the airport, the train station, or the border as you leave France. The rebate will then be paid directly into your personal bank account within a few weeks. Most of the shops have salespeople who speak enough English to help you. It's a good idea to learn what your French sizes are, as they will be different from American, British, or Italian sizes. Most English-speaking salespeople will know your size if you ask them and help you compute foreign to French sizes for taking home gifts. Most shops take major credit cards, but the exchange rate won't be set until the transaction is computed by the credit card company. Look for shops that advertise tourist rebates, and bring your passport if you plan to pay with traveler's checks. Many stores have sidewalk sales where they place merchandise outside on tables to catch your attention. If you'd like to shop like the locals, then forget your supermarket upbringing and head for the outdoor markets and specialty shops. The meat market features sausages and hams hanging for inspection, and usually the butcher is right there to cut you something special. The vegetable market is colorful and always fresh. They'll wrap your choices in paper, but you'll need your own shopping bag to carry it all. The fish market is also completely open for inspection, as everyone knows the only way to judge a good fish is by touch and smell. Gourmet cheese shops are abundant in France, and it's worth a look inside to just see the hundreds of varieties available. They're not pre-packaged and processed, but sold by weight, usually from the original wheel. Wine is never far away, and the shopkeeper can recommend a good wine in your price range. In review, the following are a list of streets that have designer shopping. And this is a list of shopping areas that are more moderately priced. The department stores are open every day except Sunday, and usually with underground parking. 4 Les Drugstore stores carrying just about everything are open every day until 2 a.m. If you're looking for gourmet food shops for yourself or as gifts, here are some good choices. And here are some wine shops varying in price and selection. If you like to antique shop but have limited time, you'll find a large number of shops grouped together here. The Champs-Élysées, one of the avenues radiating from the Arc de Triomphe, has some higher-priced shopping, but the street is known more for atmosphere than good prices.
The Champs-Élysées is probably the most famous street in Paris, and it's definitely the best for people watching. The idea here is to have a coffee in a little cafe or brasserie and just watch the world go by.
Outdoor cafes and people watching are a form of entertainment in France, especially in the late afternoon. Brasseries will post the menu and the prices outside, so you know what you're getting yourself into. Some waiters may seem rude or impatient. Don't be intimidated. Just be firm without aggressiveness. They can be very helpful. Brasseries are casual restaurants with moderate prices, but for speed and economy, even the French are turning to fast food chains. Pastry shops are fun to look in just to see the intricacies in pastry design. They will sell you just one, but don't make the mistake of asking for a Napoleon. That's an American invention. The French will be quick to inform you that Napoleon was a French leader, not a pastry. Restaurants are slightly more formal than cafes and brasseries. Some have outdoor cafe sections, but the insides are usually set with linens and flowers. They vary in price and quality, and you should make reservations 2 or 3 days in advance for the more fashionable places. Every restaurant has its specialty, and I also found that all French food is not the same. I talked with George Jallara, a local restaurant owner.
One of the highlights of a visit to France is the French food.
Yeah.
Are there different kinds of French cooking?
Yes, two nouvelle cuisine and the traditional cuisine.
He said Nouvelle cuisine was newer and lighter than traditional cooking, but most of the French preferred traditional. I then asked Richard de Vachel if it was really that important to have the right wine.
So it's very important. We always try to find the right wine that goes with the main course or the course you choose. So, for example, with fish, we're trying to have white wine, and with beef, it's mostly red wine.
He then went on to explain white wine is also a good choice for veal and poultry, and red is good with game. I then discovered that the French take their dogs everywhere, so don't be surprised to find dogs in the best restaurants, even sitting in a chair at the table. In review, here is a list of good areas to find popular outdoor cafes. For an expensive splurge, at least $50 a person, here are 2 recommendations. Call 2 to 3 days in advance for reservations. Tip 15% for good service. Don't tip to try and get a good table. Be on time for your reservations and don't be intimidated by the waiter. To save money, ask for the menu of the day or plate of the day. It's usually an excellent choice. Also ask for house wine. It's almost half the price of the bottles and usually very good. Although there is no rule for ordering wine, I recommend white wine with fish, poultry, and veal, and red wine with beef, pork, and game. The following list will help you identify what's on the menu, since you'll rarely find a menu in English. After dinner, the city comes alive again with more than one option to keep you entertained.
Nightlife is one of Paris's most popular attractions, and it's remained just as boisterous as it was at the turn of the century when Toulouse-Lautrec made the Moulin Rouge famous with his paintings of their can-can dancers. Well, the Moulin Rouge is still here, and the can-can dancers, and it's one of the most popular shows in Paris.
The shows are fun and witty in the grand tradition, but may be expensive. Most of the floor shows in Paris are topless or feature female impersonators in comedy reviews. It's wholesome enough for young teenagers with parental supervision, but I don't recommend these shows for children. If I had to give Parisian floor shows a rating, most would be PG-13, not unlike what you'd see in Las Vegas. Other entertainment is available in all styles and locations.
The place for going out at night, drinking, dancing, and having a good time is here in the Latin Quarter near Sorbonne University. There's a lot of shops, discos, nightclubs, and international restaurants, and it's especially popular with the young people.
Cinemas and movies are shown in French. You line up outside and tip the usher who shows you your seat. Don't be turned off by long lines, you'll almost always get in. International restaurants, Greek, Chinese, Arabic, no matter what kind of food you can think of, it's probably here. And reservations in this area are not really necessary except for the more popular restaurants. Discos and nightclubs, jazz clubs, rock clubs, they're also here. I would ask for a recommendation of a good place to go so you don't end up paying a cover charge at a place you're not interested in staying in. Either ask your hotel concierge, or if you're under 30, maybe someone your own age, like a student or a bartender. Everyone has their favorite spots, so it may be wise to get a few opinions. In any clubs other than tourist spots, French will probably be the only language spoken. In review, here's a list of the most popular floor shows featuring girls and topless dancers. And here's a list of shows featuring female impersonators, comedians, or striptease artists. Theater is available in several forms. These are the most popular, but again, all are in French, so musicals may be your best bet. Pick up opera tickets at the box office if you're looking for a same-day performance. Agencies add a commission and last-minute seats are turned in here. Line up outside for the cinema. Champs-Élysées theaters cost a little more because they're air-conditioned. Worth it in the summer. Here's a list of fashionable clubs and discos, usually with a cover charge or membership required. They may or may not still be fashionable when you arrive. Here's a list of places to go for jazz music. For information on what's happening when you're there, ask your concierge or pick up one of the weekly entertainment papers. Take the time to see some of the sights outside of Paris. Fontainebleau will be our first stop.
The town of Fontainebleau is about a 90-minute drive from Paris and one of the most popular day trips from the city. The main attraction here is the Palace of Fontainebleau, originally built as a medieval hunting lodge by Francis I and then expanded throughout the Renaissance by future kings to what it is now. In fact, it was from the top of these steps that Napoleon said his final farewell to his troops.
This front section of the palace overlooks the oval courtyard, the old core of the original palace. A medieval tower is one remaining section of a castle that was originally located on the site. Francis I began the reconstruction, and you'll see his emblem everywhere. The steps were originally shaped like a horseshoe, but later changed as most of the palace was. Inside, what became known as the Fontainebleau School of Design featured the lower half of the walls paneled in carved walnut and the upper half covered in paintings of scenes from classical mythology. Some of the rooms you'll see include the room where Pope Pius VII was held prisoner for 2 years and Napoleon's bedroom.
You know, you really don't realize how big the palace is until you get out and start walking through the grounds. So be sure to allow yourself enough time, at least a half a day, to look around not only the inside of the palace, but the gardens as well.
The gardens surrounding the palace are laid out in various styles. The woodsy feeling on one side reflects the hunting lodge that it originally was, surrounded by the famous forest of Fontainebleau, known as a hunter's paradise for hundreds of years. In the acres of ground running on the other side, fountains and green lawns are meticulously manicured and lined with paths for strolling and relaxing. Wear flat shoes as the paths are gravel and you could easily walk a mile trying to see everything. The Grand Canal was purposely designed with it narrower at one end for the illusion of much longer length. Visitors are free to wander the grounds on their own, and the palace itself is open from 12 to 4 and closed on Sundays.
The town of Fontainebleau grew up around the palace and the forest surrounding it, and it's very typical of French small towns around the country. So if you do have the time, I recommend spending the night because it's what you expect to see when you come to France.
The town has one major street that's easily walked to from the palace. Most of the shopkeepers and hotel employees speak English, and the majority of the hotels are very beautiful old manor homes. Fontainebleau is an easy drive or train ride, taking 1 to 1.5 hours from Paris, and definitely a worthwhile trip. In review, the following is what to see in Fontainebleau. Our next stop is Versailles, home of one of the most famous and beautiful palaces in the world. The Palace of Versailles was originated as a simple chateau by Louis XIII. Later, his son, Louis XIV, developed it into a grand palace to match the magnificence of his reign. You can tour through the apartments, and I advise arriving when it opens to avoid the crowds. Your car or bus will park outside the main gate, and you'll have to walk uphill through the great courtyard, not a short walk by any means. The courtyard is laid with uneven cobblestones, and even the shortest thin heel will get caught in the cracks. Take a moment to admire the statues in the courtyard, particularly the equestrian statue of Louis XIV in the center. Louis XIV was responsible for the layout of the palace and the gardens, and future kings and queens, including Marie Antoinette, were to keep the royal residence and the capital of France here in Versailles. You'll see the Queen's bedchamber with a secret doorway on the left side of the bed leading to her bath chamber and into the rear of the King's bedchamber. Other rooms include the Drawing Room of War with a stucco relief of Louis XIV on horseback. The Peace Drawing Room, featuring original decorator pieces chosen by Marie Antoinette. The Queen's Staircase, featuring slabs of multicolored marble, beautiful but slippery to leather-soled shoes, and the alcove of the King's bedchamber with a bust of Louis XIV on the mantel. The Library of Louis XVI features an astronomical clock on the fireplace telling the hour, date, month, and phase of the moon, and the famous Hall of Mirrors, completed in 1684, where the Versailles Treaty was signed ending World War I.
The Palace of Versailles is about a 30 to 60-minute drive from Paris, depending on the traffic, and it's a definite must-see for anyone coming to France. A quick tour will take you about an hour to go through the royal apartments and about an hour to wander through the grounds, but you could easily spend a whole day here.
The gardens surrounding the palace were laid out in precise geometrical patterns. Fountains, lakes, hedges, and flowers all combined to look like a mosaic or tapestry viewed from above. To the 17th century mind, formal gardens represented the triumph of man over nature and civilization over barbarism. An out-of-place branch or leaf was immediately snipped back into shape with the same discipline and formality that was practiced in the king's court. Whole armies of gardeners were kept busy trimming and planting, ripping up old displays and flower patterns, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, depending on the whim of the king. In review, you can visit the palace and grounds of Versailles every day except Monday, and it's about a 45-minute drive from Paris. Our next stop, Chartres, was called the French Acropolis by Rodin as the original settlement, and its Gothic cathedral sits on top of a high hill. It can be seen for miles around, and it's considered to have the most beautiful stained glass windows in France. Architecturally, it's a medieval masterpiece, and writer Claudel commented, "It can be seen from afar, crowning the old town." The theater of Chartres is the only other rival to the cathedral as the main reason for the many pilgrimages to the town.
If you have the time, the town of Chartres is about an hour's drive from Paris and another popular side trip from the city. The main attraction here is the Gothic cathedral, but my favorite part was the picturesque side streets.
Surrounding the cathedral are a maze of side streets known as the High Town, most winding slowly down the hill to the new section built along the old fortifications called Low Town. High Town was built for horses, not cars, and walking is the most practical way to get around here. As with most of the sightseeing spots in Paris, the streets are cobbles and high heels are impractical.
All throughout France, be prepared to do some walking because that's how you're really going to see things.
Being prepared means tennis shoes or flats, and don't burden yourself with a heavy purse or camera bag. Wear something with pockets to keep your hands free, and you'll be amazed at how much less tired you'll feel. The open market in Chartres is just down the hill from the cathedral, and it's interesting to see where all the families and restaurants come for their daily supplies. In review, the following is a list of highlights to see in Chartres.
Allez, mangez du chou-fleur! Oh, il est bon, le chou-fleur. Allez, 15 francs les deux.
Accommodations in France are usually all different, and unless you're staying at a major American hotel chain where all the rooms are the same, you'll find this change very refreshing. Many are decorated with original antiques, and although the basic amenities are all there, the decor will differ room to room, especially in the smaller hotels and inns. The bathrooms may have washing facilities in one room and the toilet in a separate closet, but almost all will have a bidet and either a shower or bath with a shower attachment. Be sure to make reservations before arrival, especially during holiday seasons and conventions. There will usually be someone who speaks English at the front desk when you arrive, unless you're in a very remote or untouristic area. You'll be asked to present your passport upon check-in, and most hotels prefer you to leave your key at the desk when you go outside of the hotel. King-size beds are rare, but a twin room has 2 single beds that are either already pushed together or you can push them together yourself. Queen-size beds are not that popular either, unless you're in a brand new hotel, and if you request a double, that's what you get, 1 double bed. Many hotels, especially outside of Paris, are old mansions that have been converted, so it's very possible to find fireplaces and always lots of atmosphere. Hotels and inns are rated by the tourism office from 1 to 4-star deluxe. Even if there is no restaurant in the hotel, breakfast is always available and may or may not be included in the price of your room. Ask your travel agent to arrange at least one night in a French chateau. They're all original private estates that have been converted to beautiful hotels. In review, hotels are rated from 1 to 5 or 1 to 4-star deluxe. Make your reservations well in advance, especially during holidays and conventions, and apartments are available but with a 1-month minimum stay. Reservation terminology differs slightly between countries. Don't ask for a double if you really want a twin. The following is a list of general information that will help you prepare for your trip and take some of the confusion out of your arrival. From Charles de Gaulle Airport to Paris is 23 kilometers. An Air France bus leaves every 15 minutes and takes about 30 minutes. Same with the train, and that costs about 30 francs. Taxis are the most convenient, but also the most expensive. The same services are available from Orly West and Sud, but since the train stops a lot, taxis and buses are faster. The following is where to rent a bicycle or moped, and weekly rates are available. Camping is popular outside of the city center and available with full facilities. Babysitters can be arranged through your hotel with a day's notice, and the following are a few attractions that kids will enjoy. Cigarettes and tobacco are available at a licensed tobacco shop. The shops have a red tobacco sign out front, and British and American brands are available at higher prices. Local car rental companies are cheaper than international companies, but you'll have to return the car where you rented it. There's an age minimum, and credit cards or cash deposits are accepted. Men wear jackets and ties in better restaurants. Parisians dress contemporary in the clubs and do bring a sweater and either an umbrella or a raincoat. Call your consulate or embassy if you lose your money, lose your passport, get into trouble, or have an accident. Watch out for pickpockets. Even kids will pick your pocket. Use your hotel safe deposit box and carry traveler's checks. You need a passport to enter France, but no visas or vaccinations for citizens of Great Britain and the United States. Drive on the right and be prepared for traffic jams and cars entering on the right. Look for large blue peace signs indicating underground parking. You'll need a converter with French adapters to convert American electricity to French. Hotels have adapters but not converters, and they run out of loaners quickly, so bring your own. Bathroom outlets are for razors only. Other outlets are inconveniently placed, so I'd bring an extension cord and a small makeup mirror. The following are emergency telephone numbers. If you'd like a private guide or driver, ask your hotel or a local travel agency. Hairdressers are widely available and prices vary. A service charge is added in, but an additional 10% tip is expected. French is spoken in France, but hotels and shops usually have English-speaking employees. Carry your hotel's name and address written in French so you can at least get back there in a taxi. Hotels offer one-day service for laundry and dry cleaning, but you pay for the convenience. It's cheaper to find a cleaner's or a launderette on your own. The main post office is open 24 hours every day, and here is where to have all mail sent to you. Bring an extra supply of any medicine you'll need in your carry-on luggage, including something for diarrhea and stomach upsets. Your hotel has a list of doctors, and you might want to consider travel health insurance. There's a 24-hour pharmacy on the Champs-Élysées, and here is the address and phone number. The French franc is the unit of currency, and you're not allowed to leave France with more than 5,000 French francs or the equivalent in any currency unless you declare it upon entering France. Major credit cards and traveler's checks are widely accepted. Carry your passport for traveler's check transactions, and banks will give you the best exchange rate. Most film brands are available but expensive, so bring a supply. 1 hour developing is available too, but also expensive. You'll see dogs everywhere in France, including restaurants. Dog excrement is regularly cleaned from the sidewalks, but watch where you walk anyway. Paris is 7 hours ahead of New York. Service charges are usually included in restaurants and hotels, but any extra is up to you. 10 to 15% is expected by taxi drivers, tour guides, and bartenders. The following is a suggested tipping guideline. Public portable toilets are widely available. They look like a ticket booth on the street, and you insert a coin in the door to get in. If the toilet has no light switch, the light will go on when you close the door. Order something if you go into a cafe toilet. The Eurail Pass and Interrail card is honored here. Different types of tickets and classes are available, including sleepers and car trains. The water is safe to drink all over France except when marked non-drinkable. The following are average seasonal high temperatures.
Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of France with me today. And if you're planning a trip, maybe it will help you save some time and trouble. If you've already been, I hope it brought back some nice memories for you. So, from Paris, I'm Laura Mackenzie. Au revoir.